Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review.
Metal genocide! I bleed, reaching out.
What's up, guys? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, joined by Duncan and Kyle for another album review. For this review, Duncan, Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from New Jersey quintet Sentinels. The band's new album, Collapse by Design, released on October 22nd via Sharptone Records. So this is a debut album from Sentinels, which comes after 3 EPs. We had Idols in 2013, World Divide in 2016, and Unsound Recollections in 2019. This new album was produced, mixed and mastered by Randy LaBouffe at Graphic Nature Audio. Drummer Dave Rocky says, "We were all in the same headspace. Our first album had to make a statement. We needed to deliver an experience that flowed from start to finish. Lyrically and musically, it follows a trajectory starting brutally heavy and moving into extreme atmospheres before ending in the form of mental and spiritual rehabilitation. We knew exactly what we wanted." So, gentlemen, we reacted to one of these tracks, Inertia, like a couple of months back, maybe longer.
I think it was.
Yeah, it feels like a while ago. We all quite enjoyed that track. I think, from what I remember, I think Duncan had a bit of a slight crush on the vocalist. I think
Very handsome looking chap.
Yeah, too attractive to be a metal frontman, I think, were the words used.
And I'll be honest with you, that opinion hasn't changed. So
I was a wee bit excited the fact that the drummer was also doing some vocals, which is cool to see.
yeah.
Kyle, I think you said you were going to sell your 9-string after hearing that track.
Probably.
He's fixed his 9-string since then, so he's keeping it. Keeping it.
Yeah.
Cool. But how did the rest of the album turn out? I really hadn't listened to any of the other singles that had been released from this album. After I heard Inertia, I was quite interested to hear more, so I kind of left it at that and just thought, let's just see what happens when we listen to the album. Okay, so honestly, I have kind of mixed feelings about this album, actually. Not what I was expecting at all. From the track I heard, I was really excited to hear the rest of this, and was expecting it to be a bit of a banger, to be honest. It's an album that's definitely got a lot going on. I think we can all agree on that. I definitely needed like a few listens to this before I could like kind of try and break it down. And even then, I was still kind of struggling with it. They don't really do conventional. These songs don't really follow like a traditional like verse chorus type structure, which is fine. You know, a lot of bands do that. It can be quite a bit of a kind of head fuck to listen to. You know, it's very, very progressive, very highly technical, and the tracks constantly kind of morph in and out of different tempos and rhythms and stuff, which sounds very impressive. And I think like in a short burst like that track we reacted to, Inertia, that totally worked for me. 45 minutes of that, however, didn't work for me as well as I expected. These guys, they're not a band that has like big hooks, if you know what I mean. You know, there's not like a huge chorus or a big melody. You could argue there's a couple of tracks, Desecration, Obsolete, have slightly bigger choruses, but even then they don't really grab you and like sink their hooks in. So when the album finished, it didn't really like leave me with anything, if I'm honest. The riffs, you know, here and there were pretty cool. There's a lot of kind of heavy and technical riffs, very well executed. Desecration again is a really cool breakdown, and Tyrant has some really kind of cool, like almost kind of Ion Dissonance style grooves, but as actual songs, I felt they were lacking in something to kind of hold on to. I think the one thing that I did really like were those kind of big, kind of sprawling, clean sections, and that almost kind of like atmospheric layer to the tracks that kind of added that kind of like coating of contrast. I thought they were very well placed. It did kind of remind me a little bit of like the Contortionist in places. And there's tracks where they really kind of lean into that. Solitude, for example, which kind of sits in the middle of the album, works well as quite a kind of breather track, but it shows them really kind of embracing that melodic side, which I liked. It works well on Atlas was the other one. Has a bit more of a kind of uplifting feel, and I thought that worked really well against the kind of heavier tones on that track. So I liked it from like a technical standpoint. I think it's delivered very well, and some of those riffs are utterly neck snapping. I can't like fault the playing; it's very well performed, and vocally as well. Even though it can be a little kind of similar throughout, he has a great tone, and I think he complements the band at their kind of heaviest. But I just kind of felt like something was missing. I kept waiting on something to kind of grab me, and it never really did. I think I've listened to it about 5 or 6 times now, and I just don't feel like I'm really connecting with it on any other level than its like technical dexterity. The big kind of atmospheric parts were probably my favourite thing about the album. Those were the moments that kind of caught my attention the most. Desecration, as I mentioned, is probably the highlight for me of the album. Had a great flow to it, really cool kind of balance of heaviness and melody. I thought it was spot on. Production's really good as well. I think, like, I listened to the EPs and you can hear the production is a clear step up from the 2019 Unsound Recollections EP. It's far more polished, very punchy, very crisp sounding, with the kind of ambient moments sounding much bigger than before. So, you know, from that point of view, I really liked the production. I just felt like the album was kind of missing something for me overall. What about you guys? How did you get on with this? Duncan, what did you think of this?
I think I liked this a bit more than you.
Oh, interesting.
Which is weird because I actually, coming into this, thought you would like this more than me. So I'm now like I'm the optimist. Don't know if I like that.
Okay.
I hear what you're saying, and I think part of that might be that this band in general has come from a background of doing EPs. That I think moving into the longer form is always difficult, especially if you're used to not necessarily having a kind of flow and a through line on a longer form.
Yeah.
I've said it like many times on here and off here, that the art of making an album is sometimes lost in bands. I think they just think if they just throw a collection of songs together in any order, that constitutes an album, and it doesn't. I feel like an album should be an experience. Like, you should, very much like if you were creating your own mixtape, it should take you through things. It should, the songs should be placed for purpose, and delivered in such a way that it organically makes you want to listen to the entire album, which is how I listen to music, as opposed to picking out individual songs and just listening to one song. I like the full experience.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree that at times this album feels kind of unfocused in that way. But what I did enjoy about it was, interestingly enough, the amount of things that are going on here. Yes, there are missteps. I think there's kind of technical sections that feel like they go on a bit too long or don't actually bring anything to particular tracks. Overall, out with the fact that, look, we can play this, and that's in itself is fucking very impressive. But like the moments, the stark contrast here between like full on, like you mentioned, like an island distance to sections of clean and ambience, to me really, really works. And I think what they maybe are just missing is the fine balancing act of getting those things together on like tracks. I think they're very good at delivering a track which is very crazy, very techie, and a track which is predominantly clean or ambient. Yeah. I don't think they've quite mastered the ability to do both of them on the same track in a way which felt overly satisfying. But at its core, I mean, I enjoyed the production on this one. I enjoyed the you know, vocally. I think the guy, you mentioned his tone, I think he's a fucking great vocalist. I really like, to me, you could pluck him out of this band, put him in maybe 3 or 4 different bands, and he would still sound fucking great. He's just got a tone that is very amenable to different styles.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the kind of the clean work on the guitars, and the techie work on the guitars is great as well. There's not a band member here that I personally think is, well, that's maybe the bit where it lets it down. And having not listened to any of the previous stuff at all, I would agree. I think the production, you know, it fits their sound.
Yeah,
it's crisp, but it's very, very, very punchy. Yet it still manages to capture depth when you get those ambient sections, which once again, like those sort of things, I found myself, it's not an album that I necessarily would rush back and check out like tomorrow, for example, but there's enough in here that, you know, I'll reevaluate this maybe 2 months down the line, maybe even a year down the line. I'll come back to this to see if there's another bit that hooks me in, because like this song, the songs on this album, 3/4 of this album completely works for me, and there's a quarter where I just kind of feel like I'm not sure what they were going for. I'm not sure if it's a case of, you know, there's a bit of not even quality control, but album quality control. As in, does this fit the album? Does this fit the sound we're going for? And I think that's maybe the missteps here. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 songs here that kind of feel almost like the odd one out. Like the band, it still sounds like the band's doing it, but I don't think it fits the vibe or tone that the album's going for. And interestingly enough, as a guy who really likes his A to B to C music in terms of structure, I was digging some of the like the lack of convention that's on this album. I found it as a kind of welcome palate cleanser to some of the other stuff that we've been listening in this week, which did feel very formulaic. This kind of caught me in the back foot. It was kind of almost as if the band were kind of daring themselves to go deliberately against the grain of songwriting. So yeah, I think I do come in above you. I don't think I come in much above you, but I think they're a band that have infinite promise. All the components are here. Like you can easily shred on their instruments. They can easily write songs, and all what I think they're just missing is the balancing act that comes, like I say, between that really techie stuff and the clean stuff, and like really putting that in to give you the hooks that you're talking about. Those moments where you're like, oh, that bit there just lifts the whole track up. I think they're just maybe missing that. But I also think that, and it's not just them. I think there's a wash of bands this year that are releasing the most brutal, the most technical stuff ever, and I don't think at any point they've sat down and said, are we writing an album or are we just putting brutal riff after brutal riff? Which I think there's a lot of bands now doing that, and there's a lost art to it. I'm an album guy. I like listening to albums, and this one feels like 3/4 of an album and 1/4 of something else that they were maybe wanting to try and do but hadn't really kind of sunk into it. I think in terms of putting them on the map, it's certainly putting them on the map for me. I will be watching with keen interest as to where the band goes next. Now they've put a flag out. I just think that they're missing the element that makes a band like a Black Crown Initiate, for example, that pulls in all these different things. But when you hear it, it's an album, and you're like, holy fuck, and it takes you through all these journeys and all the rest. I think that's maybe what they're missing. But as first albums go,
for a debut,
you know what I mean? Like, even if they've been at it a while, this is their first album. It sounds fucking great. Just some fine tuning, and I think they're there.
Cool. Kyle, what about yourself?
Pretty much on the same level as you guys. It's there's a lot here to like, and some stuff that is just like, why did you do that? But production-wise, it's very clean and polished and studio fuckery and all that stuff. But I mean, it's good. It's got a lot of depth to it, and I like that they tried to vary their sound quite a bit. But there's just some stuff that feels a bit 10 years too late to the party, you know? It's like stuff I've heard a lot before, especially like stuff that was on Basic Records 10 years ago, like Ion Dissonance and Dissipate and stuff like that. It's like, but I mean, those bands didn't have all this ambient stuff, and these guys can do ambient stuff really well. So I think you're right. If they balance more of the ambient stuff in and make it more a core part of their sound, they'll probably do a lot better, because it was hard to differentiate these guys from a ton of other bands I've heard in the past decade. So,
and also they're from that era, though. If you go back, the first EP was what, 2013?
Yeah.
So that's the Basic Records era. So I mean, if that's their sound, they've just carried it through. So
standard bearer, you know.
But
I'll never change. No, I'm kidding. But it was good for what they do, because I mean, I want to say it's a shame because they are very good at what they do, but it's not really a shame because it's good music. It's just a bit sort of a little bit dated now. I don't know. That's how it felt for me. I didn't quite connect with it. And I mean, there were some fucking amazing grooves and some really good riffs and incredible technical proficiency on display. But like you mentioned, that's not really enough to carry for an entire album. So they had some pacing and stuff. And okay, you don't want to write conventional songs, but you still need something for the listener to grab onto. And there was some parts for me as like a player that I could grab onto and a producer that I could grab onto. Go, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty sweet little lick or sweep there or something. But it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah. But it'd be interesting to see where they go further from this, definitely, because they definitely have a lot of potential, and I really hope they carry on.
Yeah.
And hone their craft more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's bands out there that can do that. You know, I mean, take a Tony Danza for example. You know, I mean, they've got that like huge technical side, but they've got hooks as well. You know, there's huge parts of their songs that just get stuck in your head, and I think that's what's missing for me from this one from Sentinels. Okay, so ratings for Collapse by Design. I really like the concept of this, like the way that Dave was talking about, you know, moving from something really brutally heavy, going into more kind of extreme atmospheres and ending up at a kind of spiritual rehabilitation. I really liked that idea, but I just didn't feel like the songs kind of came together as songs. It was cool moments. It's very technical, and I think like for me, I would probably go back to certain tracks from this album. I can see myself going back to like your Inertias and the Atlas or Tyrant or Desecration. There's certain moments on it I think are really good, and others where I just think it's a little bit forgettable. I think I'm going to go 3. I'm going to go 3 out of 5 on this one. Duncan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I do like it a little bit more. 3.5 from me.
3.5.
I don't think what you're saying is. I think we're all basically saying the same thing. Essentially, I think I'm maybe just a little bit more forgiving overall. But yeah, 3.5.
Yeah. I think it's since I turned 40 though, I'm a wee bit more harsh these days. You know what I mean? I just don't have time for it anymore.
Well, me being a young pup, I mean, I just
True.
let things slide. But you know.
Kyle, what about yourself?
I mean, the guys said that they took you through a journey from brutal heavy to atmospherics to something else. I don't think that really came together on the album. I mean, listen to the first track and the last track, and they're kind of similar. There's a bit of difference, but it's like, yeah, there should be more of a contrast between that if you're going to say that about your album. But I mean, it was really well played and really well produced and all that. And, you know, there's some very impressive moments, and I really want to see where they go from here. So I think I'm going to come in same as Duncan, 3.5 out of 5.
3.5. Cool. So this one drops on October 22nd on Sharptone Records. You can check these guys out at facebook.com/sentinelsnj. I'll put a little link in the description below to their Facebook and to the pre-order for the album as well. And let us know what you think. If you've heard any of the singles, once you've heard the album, drop in some comments below and we'll get back to you. Thanks for checking out the review, much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.